بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد. We started last week with the section on the conditions of the Shahada, Shurut al-Shahadatain, the condition of the Shahada. And today we're going to do a section, Al-Fasl al-Thalithu, الفصل الثالث في التشريع the chapter dealing with التشريع, which is what we'll read قال حفظه الله التشريع حق لله تعالى. The number one, التشريع, which is making something halal or haram, but he's going to give a little more specifics. والمراد بالتشريع ما ينزله الله لعباده من المنهج الذي يسيرون عليه في العقائد والمعاملات وغيرها. It is what Allah revealed, whatever Allah sent down for His slaves, and what is sent down is what they use to live their lives with. What is used for the Muslim to practice Islam in their daily life. Right? Yusirun alayh. And then he mentioned specifically that could be in issues of aqidah, mashallah, issues of aqidah, or fil mu'amalat, in issues of different dealings, dealing with people, could be business transactions, whatever the case is, outside of aqidah, fil mu'amalat, everything that Allah sent down that the Muslims use to practice Islam with. Tayyib. This is a tashri', which is translated, could be translated as who has the right to legislate, to say something is haram and something is halal. This is reserved strictly for Allah Jalla wa'ala. That no one else has the right to make something that Allah made halal and they come and say it's haram. And no one has the right that Allah made something haram and they come and they say, no, it's halal. So from the things that the Muslims need to live by in their daily lives, outside of Aqidah, how to believe in Allah, and how to deal with each other, marital issues, regular issues, dealing with your neighbor, because there's a lot of things that come under that, dealing with family, all of those things. He said, مِن ذَلِكَ التَّحْلِيل وَالتَّحْرِيم. From those things is التَّحْلِيل وَالتَّحْرِيم, is saying or making something permissible in Islam and saying that something is impermissible. That we only know something is permissible Islamically by what? By the text, either Quran or the Sunnah of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And the same thing, we know something is impermissible based on text, right? Everybody with me? طيب. He says, فَلَيْسَ لِأَحَدٍ أَنْ يَحِلَّ إِلَّا مَا أَحَلَّهُ اللَّهُ. Nobody has the right to make something permissible except what Allah already made permissible. With me? For example, a Muslim man Islamically is allowed to marry up to how many wives? 4. So a person comes and they say it's permissible to marry 5. Allah didn't make it permissible to marry 5. Allah made it permissible to marry 4. And anything over 4 is impermissible. Right? Now it's a difference, and he's going to get to that. It's a difference if a person does something knowingly, and if a person does something not knowing. Tayyib. He says the same thing. No one can make something haram impermissible except that Allah made it impermissible. That tashri', legislation, is strictly for Allah Jalla wa'ala. قال تعالى, Allah said, وَلَا تَقُولُوا لِمَ تَصِفُوا أَلْسِنَتُكُمْ الكذب هذا حلال وهذا حرام لتفتروا على الله الكذب. And so the Nahl, the B, ayah 117, Allah said, and don't say with your tongues a lie. Don't lie with your tongues and say that this is halal, this is permissible, وهذا haram, and this is impermissible. Right? In order that you lie on Allah Jalla wa'ala. Right? Surah An-Nahl, ayah 117. Allah said in another ayah, قال تعالى, قُلْ أَرَأَيْتُمْ مَا أَنزَلَ اللَّهُ لَكُمْ مِنْ رِزْقٍ فَجَعَلْتُم مِّنْهُ حَرَامًا وَحَلَالًا. Allah said, is it that what Allah sent down and made permissible for you, right, from rizq, and you turn around and you say, la, this is haram, what Allah made halal already, or the person says this is halal, what Allah made haram. Then Allah says, قُلْ Allahu أَذِنَ لَكُمْ. Did Allah give you the permission to do that? Did He give you the pass to do that? To change the legislation that He sent down? أَمْ عَلَى اللَّهِ تَفْتَرُونَ. Or do you lie, or you making up lies on Allah Jalla wa Ala? That's in Surah Yunus. Surah Yunus, ayah 59. Tayyib. So, Allah prohibited that we're not allowed a tahleel, to say something is halal, or a tahreem, to say something is haram, impermissible. We're not allowed to say this is permissible, this is impermissible, just from our own judgment. Except that what? Bidun dalil min al-kitab wa sunnah. Except that we have proof from the Quran and from the sunnah of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And all this comes under tashri', which it might sound simple, but it's an issue, and that's why it's mentioned. Tayyib. Allah also mentions, as He says, كما أخبر سبحانه أن من أوجب شيئا أو حرم شيئا من غير دليل فقد جعل نفسه شريكا لله فيما هو من خصائصه. Whoever does this, whoever does make something halal, right? They say this is obligatory, we have to do this. Or they make something haram and they don't have any dalil for it, right? They don't have any dalil for it. What has this person done? They made themselves a partner with Allah. In what? How do they make themselves a partner? Regarding what? Legislation. Regarding the legislation. Meaning only Allah Jalla wa Ala. We need nusus, we need the text from the Quran or from the Sunnah in order to say this is permissible. Islamically, we're allowed to do this. It's recommended to do this Islamically. It's the Sunnah to do this. And we also need the text to say, no, Islam doesn't allow us to do this. Like text from the Quran or from the Sunnah of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Like if somebody comes and they don't have a text, but they come from their own self, they think they're smart enough and they have enough knowledge and wisdom and they gained a bunch of accolades from the dunya, they reached a level that, right, they come and they believe that they can come and say, no, this is permissible Islamically, right? And this isn't permissible. Without any text, without any dalil, this person has made themselves a partner with Allah in that aspect of legislation. Tayyib. Allah said, أَمْ لَهُمْ شُرَكَاءُ شَرَعُوا لَهُمْ مِنَ الدِّينِ مَا لَمْ يَأْذَنْ بِهِ اللَّهِ. Do they have partners that those partners have legislated for them things in the religion that Allah didn't allow for them to legislate? Tayyib. That's in Surah Ash-Shura, Surah Ash-Shura, ayat 21. Surah Ash-Shura, ayat 21. Do they have partners that they did what? Those partners legislated things in the religion, said something is halal, and Allah said it's haram. They made something permissible that is impermissible, or they do the opposite. They make something impermissible that Allah made permissible. Allah said, they shara'u min ad-deen, and they do that ma lam ya'than bihi Allah. Something that Allah didn't give them the authority to do. That Allah didn't give them the authority to do. So in this case, He says, وَمَنْ أَطَاعَ هَذَا الْمُشَرِّعِ. Whoever obeys that person, right, other than Allah in that thing, and this is important, وَهُوَ يَعْلَمُ. And he knows, right? They understand, they know that what the person is telling them. Whatever they're making new, whatever they're bringing new, the person knows بِذَلِكَ وَيَعْلَمْ بِذَلِكَ وَوَافَقَهُ عَلَى فِعْلِهِ فَقَدْ أَشْرَكَهُ مَعَ اللَّهِ. If a person does that knowingly, then they have put partners with Allah. They've made shirk with Allah in that type of situation, tashri'ah, legislation. Not everybody that you see, they find, oh, he's just mushrik. No, you're not, no. It's possible they don't know. Whoever knows intentionally, they know that they do it intentionally. Tayyib. Allah says in another ayat, well, Allah says regarding that, if they obey Him, وَإِن أَدْعَمْتُمُوهُمْ إِنَّكُمْ, I'm sorry, أطعتموهم وإن أطعتموهم إنكم لمشركون. And if you obey them, in that, then you have become a what? Then you have put partners with Allah in that regarding legislation. طيب, that's in Surah Al-An'am, ayat 121. Meaning, as he says, those who make things that are permissible, that Allah made impermissible, then they have obeyed them. And this is from putting partners with Allah regarding the legislation and tashri'ah. Not necessarily in the laws, names, and attributes. Not necessarily that they stood up, right? They stood up and made salat, or they made sajda to a rock or no. All shirk, every time a person put partners with it, doesn't look the same. It's not one surah, it's not one picture of putting partners with Allah. This is a different picture that Allah mentions in the Quran is considered to be shirk. طيب, Allah also mentioned كما أخبر سبحانه أن من أطاع الأحبار والرهبان في تحليل ما حرم الله وتحريم ما أحله الله فقد اتخذهم أربابا من دون الله. Also, whoever obeys the priest, right? The priest, which are the religious people, the religious ones, and the ubad, the rahban, those worshipers, those people who are known for worship. It doesn't necessarily mean they have knowledge, but they're known to be worshipers. Whoever obeys them, even if the person of knowledge, right? They make something halal that Allah made haram. They say it's permissible and Allah said it's not permissible. Or they say it's haram, they say it's impermissible Islamically, and the Prophet ﷺ, we know from the Sunnah that it is permissible. Allah said, He said, even if they follow them, then they have taken them as gods other than Allah. Which is dangerous. Following without text. He goes on and mentions the ayat, which is in Surah At-Tawbah, ayat number 31. Allah said, اتخذوا أحبارهم ورهبانهم أربابا من دون الله. They have taken their priests and those who are known for worship as gods other than Allah. I'm sorry, ayat 31, yes, At-Tawbah. They've taken their priests and those who are known for worship besides Arbaban, as gods other than Allah. And he said after that, Wal Masiha ibn Maryam. They've also taken Isa, Jesus alayhi salam, they've taken him also as a god other than Allah. Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu. Ibn Abbas is famous for what? Abdullah ibn Abbas is famous for tafsir, explanation of the Quran. Ibn Abbas said about that ayat, which is in Tafsir ibn Kathir. Ibn Abbas said, إِنَّهُمْ اتَّبِعُوا فِيمَا حَلَّلُوا وَحَرَّمُوا. They followed the priests and the worshipers, those who had more knowledge than them and those who had more worship than them. They followed them in whatever they made halal, and they followed them in whatever they made haram. طيب, Imam As-Sa'di rahimahullah, he said, Hum ulama'uhum. They were their scholars. They followed their scholars from the Ahlul Kitab, the Jews and the Christians. They followed their scholars. When they made something, they changed and they made what Allah sent down, they changed it. And the people followed them in that, following their scholars. He said also, al-ubad, those who are known to be worshipers. They did what? They took those people, as Allah said, اتَّخَذُوا أَحْبَارَهُمْ. They took their priests, their ulama, وَرَهْبَانَهُمْ, and their ubad, the worshippers from them, أَرْبَابًا مِن دُونِ اللَّهِ, as gods other than Allah. طيب, how is that? لما سمع عدي بن حاتم رضي الله عنه هذه الآية. When Adi, he heard this ayah, قال يا رسول الله. This hadith is related by Imam At-Tirmidhi. قال يا رسول الله إنا لسنا نعبدهم. He said, O Messenger of Allah, we don't worship him. When he heard this ayah, whoever takes their ulama and the righteous ones, the worshippers, then they've taken another deity other than Allah. They've worshipped other than Allah. Adi said, Ya Rasulullah. He said, "Inna lasna na'budu." We don't worship them. We don't worship them. We don't make dua to them. We don't make sajda to them. We don't fast and make our worship for them. Right? صح؟ طيب. قال عليه الصلاة والسلام قال له النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أليسوا يحلون ما حرم الله فتحلونه. He said, didn't they make permissible what Allah made impermissible? And you did the same, you followed them in that? وَيُحَرِّمُونَ مَا أَحَلَّ اللَّهُ فَتُحَرِّمُونَهُ. And they made haram, they said it's not permissible, and Allah said it is permissible. And you followed them in that, and you did the same thing they did? قَالَ بَلَى. Of course, that's what we did. The Sheikh said it. He went against the Quran. He went against the revelation. He went against the revelation. And you followed them in that, right? Then you do that, he said something's halal, and Allah said it's haram, and you followed them in that, and you made it halal. He said, Bala. Of course that's what we did. The Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, Qala fatilka ibadatuhum. That is worshiping. That is considered to be worship, which is dangerous, 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 dangerous. Especially now, and it shows the level, as Allah in this ayat is talking about, as it says in the tafsir, they're scholars, the ulama. And it's important that we don't go down the same road that they went to. As the Prophet ﷺ told us in other hadith, that the Christians, they went overboard in worship of their scholars, worship and praise of the ulama, their scholars. They went overboard until they worshiped them. And we already know, but having knowledge of one thing and being practical and implement is two different things. It's different to know the hadith, and it's one thing to know the understanding of the hadith, and it's another thing to implement the hadith. That's why the Prophet ﷺ said, don't go to extremes, building on my grave, right? Don't go to extremes. With who? With the Prophet ﷺ. Don't do like they did. Went to extremes where now a brother won't say it. He won't say it with his tongue, but all of his actions point to this sheikh can't be wrong. He can't make a mistake. And you better not say he was wrong. He won't say it with his tongue, or she won't say it with her tongue, but all of the actions, all of the belief, everything points to that. Evidently, he can't be wrong. He's knowledgeable, Shaykh, Jaleel, right? When the Prophet ﷺ told us, the mujtahid gets 2 rewards. Shaykh gets 2 rewards. He could be wrong. He gets 2 rewards if he's right. He makes a judgment on something. If he's right, he gets 2 rewards for his effort that he put in, and he was correct in the ruling. And if he's incorrect, he still gets a reward. Sheikh still gets a reward if he's incorrect, which means, that's important, which means that Bani Adam, he could be wrong. He could be wrong. But, as is mentioned here, going overboard. They make something halal, Allah said it's haram. They make something haram, Allah said it's halal. You follow them in it, you worship them. That is worship of them. So it's a dangerous, dangerous situation. That hadith is recorded by Imam At-Tirmidhi, rahimahullah. Tayyib. Now, regarding worship, the next chapter, Al-Fasl Al-Rabi' Al-Ibadah. Worship and the meaning of worship and what worship, what is included in worship? What is included inside of the word worship? What does it include? So he says, firstly, the meaning of worship. Asl al-ibadah at-tadhallul wal-khudu'. The origin of the word is that a person surrenders himself, that they're obedient. A person surrenders himself and that they're obedient, subservient. Words that we might look at as being what? When you hear the word surrender, soft, weak. But this softness and this weakness is for Allah. It's for Allah Jalla wa Ala, that we are weak. We are weak. We're weak. We're weak flesh-wise, and we're weak when it comes to our desires. Right? Everybody got a different fitna. So what's not my fitna is your fitna. What's your fitna is not the next person's struggle. And his struggle is not her struggle, but everybody has some type of weakness where we need Allah Jalla wa Ala. So he says the first thing, the origin of ibadah is obedience and to surrender and to be subservient, to lower yourself, The shari'ah, legislatively, it has a lot of different meanings. It has more than one meaning that has been defined by the ulama. From those meanings, and al-ibadah, ta'atun lillah, هي طاعة الله بامتثال ما أمر الله به على ألسنة رسله. It is to obey Allah and follow the commands that His messengers came with. To obey Allah and follow the commands that His messengers came with. Or it says also at-tadhallul lillah, lowering yourself and being obedient and surrendering oneself to Allah. And this is the highest level of humility, that a person lowers themselves and obeys Allah Jalla wa Ala, and at the same time they have the highest level of love for Allah when they do that. That they love Allah doing that. Thirdly is the definition of Shaykh Islam Taymiyyah rahimahullah, where he says worship is a comprehensive term, ismun jami'un li kulli ma yuhibbu Allahu yardahu, that it includes everything. Worship includes everything that Allah loves. Everything that Allah loves and everything that is pleasing to Allah. Min al-aqwali wal-a'mali. Whether it's a statement that a person says that's pleasing to Allah, or it's an action that a person says that is pleasing to Allah. Al-zahira wal-batina. Whether a person can see you doing the action, or a person can't see you doing the action. Whether a person can hear you saying it, or a person can't hear you saying it. Clear? Now the question is this. If the definition says everything that Allah loves and is pleased with is considered worship, how do we know that Allah loves that action or that statement, or if that action is pleasing to Allah? How would you know that that's something that's pleasing to Allah? Huh? Like, how do you know, mathalan? Huh? If a punishment comes with it or a reward comes with it.
How would you know that?
How would you know? How do you know that, mathalan, for example, Revelation, Jade. What in the Revelation? Revelation is a long, Quran is long, 30 chapters, ayat, thousands of verses.
From the commands and the prohibitions.
The commands and the prohibitions. That's better. That's closer.
I was going to say those things that He commands you to do, those things that He mentions that He loves.
There you are. If Allah tells you, commands us to do something, is it that Allah is going to command us to do something that's going to displease Him? Is it that the Messenger of Allah is going to command us and give us a command to do this, and it's going to be displeasing to Allah? You with me? So you find those things, or Allah praises the people who do these things. Allah praises the Ibad al-Rahman, who walk on the earth with humility. And if somebody says something ignorant to them, they khatamahum jahilun qalu salama. They return with peace. They don't combat ignorance with more ignorance. Right? So Allah is praising and describing the worshippers of Allah. So a person who takes on those traits, this is from ibadah. Those who stand up at night. So if Allah praises a thing, then we know it's something pleasing to Him. And if it's something pleasing to Him, we take it as worship. If Allah commands us to do something, we know Allah is not going to command us, or the Messenger of Allah is not going to command us to do something that's going to gain His anger. So He says everything that Allah loves and is pleased with, whether it's a statement, whether it's an action, a statement like, what? What's a statement that's considered worship, can be considered worship? La ilaha illallah. Dhikr. Dhikr is a statement. For a person to sit and take time to make dhikr is from ibadah, worship, even if it's not in the salah, even if it's outside of the salah. Tayyib. He says, or actions. We know. Actions are clear. Salah, right? But what else outside of the salah? Worship. outside of the pillars.
Picking up something out of the road.
Moving something out of the road.
In your arm.
Huh? That could be a harm to other people. Moving something out of the road that could be harmful to other people. Huh?
Smile, something.
Smiling in your face. As these are the things that the text show us, right? The text show us that these are things that are pleasing to Allah Jalla wa'ala. Right? Tayyib. A statement that is, or as he says, an action that is a zahir, that people can see. But what is an action that people can't see that may be pleasing to Allah? You correct how's that?
Thinking deep to yourself, seeing where you fall short, and coming back and making repentance.
Jayyid. Which is tafakkur, pondering over maybe one's own mistakes. A person looking at themselves, making tawbah, and then coming back and repenting. That a person I can't look at you and just tell by looking at you that you're reflecting over a sin that you committed just by looking at you. I might say something wrong. You can say, no, I'm good. Right? What else? Something that a person can't see. Khushur. That a person has humility in the salah. That a person can't see it. But Allah knows, because two people could be standing next to each other, and one has khushur, one is focused in the salah, and one is thinking about the pico bill. Right? And Allah knows. Right? So, that thing is in the inside. A person can't see. Tayyib. He goes and says that actions are broken down into actions of the heart, actions of the tongue, and actions of the limbs. Actions of the limbs. And some of these we just mentioned, but an action of the heart would be a person making an intention, or what else? An action of the heart that nobody can see it, but Allah knows. Being sincere, al-ikhlas. What else? Huh?
A person loving their brother for the sake of
Love. Having love for people. A tawakkul. Dependent. A person having really dependent on Allah Jalla wa'ala. A tawakkul. And I ain't gonna lie. Being in Saudi, you learn, you build, that builds up. A tawakkul. Relying on Allah because you be in situations across the world, and the reality is, some brothers say, being overseas is like being in jail sometimes. Because people forget about you. Nobody's sending you money, nobody. It's like you're in jail, people forget about you. And you be in a tight situation where Allah, you forced. Alhamdulillah. And that's what they say, tawakkalna ala Allah. As they say in Mecca, tawakkalna ala Allah. We just depend on Allah, let's do it.
That's true. I wasn't there that long, I was there for like 6 weeks. But I was broke after 2 weeks. I had to stay there 4 weeks with no money.
Yeah,
no
you
money.
looking around like,
Sheikh, you be surprised. People just giving us
like what?
broke.
That's
I'm talking about broke. And another country broke. Nobody even call home.
It gets pretty rough. It gets rough where a person, there's nobody to call because I'm there with him and he's broke. So I'm broke, he's broke. We all on the same boat. So what do? Nobody's sending, somebody might send a dub. I mean, somebody might say, I'll send you something, send you a half a man, a dub. I mean, it's realistic. They bring something, they come, but the the reality is that it's not what. You go down to the haram, and then you really, exactly. It builds up your tawakkul when you're in a situation, and the reality is in front of you. Tayyib. So those things that are considered from the heart. And we already mentioned the things that could be from the tongue, a dhikr with the tongue, subhanAllah, alhamdulillah, the dhikr, different types of dhikr. Tayyib. Or actions that are considered worship. What else outside of the 5 pillars, outside of the salat and hajj, will be considered worship with the body? Fasting. Huh? Dhikr, what part of the body you using? The tongue.
Yeah.
Tayyib. Sitting in the circles of ilm, talab al-ilm, jade, seeking knowledge, learning, going to the halaqat, going to the circles of knowledge to learn, walking to the masjid, walking to the salah, being good to your spouse, being good to your kids, being good to your parents, All of those things could be considered actions of the limbs. طيب, he says, وَالْعِبَادَةِ هِيَ الَّتِي خَلَقَ اللَّهُ الْخَلْقِ مِنْ أَجْلِهَا. This is the reason, all of the things that were just mentioned are the reason that Allah created the creation. And we should know this ayat by now. We don't know this ayat. We need to memorize this ayat in Surah Al-Dhariyat. In Surah Al-Dhariyat, ayat number 56. As Allah says, وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. That Allah said, I did not create the jinn and mankind except for worship. Except for worship. Which is Surah Al-Dhariyat, ayat 56. And if we keep that in front of us, it should be something that encourages us and helps us to strengthen our relationship with Allah Jalla wa Ala. So that ayat, in Surah Al-Dhariyat, as he says, Allah mentions أن الحكمة من خلق الجن والإنس هي قيامهم بعبادة الله. The wisdom behind the creation, that Allah created the jinn and the mankind, is worship. That Allah doesn't need us. ما أريد منهم من رزق وما أريد أن يطعمون. That Allah said He doesn't need anything from us. He doesn't need us to provide. We're in need of Allah Jalla wa Ala. That He does not need us at all. And if we understand that, it goes back to the definition of worship in the beginning. Weak, obedient, subservient, that a person lowers and has some humility. Has some humility. Now, the question is, or sometimes it comes up, can, for example, or the issue is, can drinking from worship, drinking water, or is eating food, we consider this worship, which is generally a custom, it's a habit, not necessarily worship, right? Eating, now saying Bismillah before you eat, that's something different, but generally just eating. Is that considered worship?
No.
No. It could be worship. If what?
If a person, like for instance, a person makes his intention, he wants to make sure he has enough food and nourishment so that, you know, he has enough energy to pray in the middle or whatever. So he, you know what I'm saying, he's not just eating to eat. He makes sure alhamdulillah his food is halal and he eats what's sufficient and so he has energy to get up. He has a
He makes his intention that for doing that, what is normally a custom, just a habit, custom that everybody does, Muslims, non-Muslims, everybody eats, sleeps, drinks water, but a person makes the intention that they're eating this intentionally to strengthen themselves for worship. Ulama say in that case, فَإِنَّ هَذِهِ الْعَادَاتِ مَعَ النِّيَّةِ الصَّالِحَةِ تُصِيرُ عِبَادَةً. With that intention, it turns into worship that a person will be rewarded for, and that worship is not restricted to, he says, وَلَيْسَتِ الْعِبَادَةِ قَاصِرَةً عَلَى الشَّعَائِرِ الْمَعْرُوفَةِ. That worship is not restricted to the main acts of worship that we know, Salat, Hajj. It's not restricted to that. If you use that definition, everything that is pleasing to Allah, that Allah loves, and that is pleasing to Allah, if you understand that, then you know worship is more than just the Salah, and more than just Hajj. That is as he said, the first thing is a comprehensive term. Tayyib. The last thing we'll do is al-fasl al-khamis. And he speaks about here some of the mistakes in understanding what worship is. Some of the mistakes in understanding what worship is. He says, al-ibadat tawqifiyya. بمعنى أنه لا يشرع شيء منها إلا بدليل من الكتاب والسنة. That worship is founded and based on, any type of worship we do is founded and based on what? Text, nusus, Quran and Sunnah. That we need a proof to do that. If not, then everybody would worship whatever you think is worship. So a person could do something haram and consider themselves getting closer to Allah, right? That there is no worship except by the text, that we have the Quran and the Sunnah that guide us to what worship is. and this is a major benefit from Islam in general, that Islam is organized. It's not chaotic. Allah didn't leave us just to figure stuff out. The Prophet ﷺ didn't leave us just to figure stuff out. That's why he sent messengers. That's why he sent the messengers, to teach the people how to worship Allah. It's the importance of following the Sunnah. That the Prophet ﷺ taught us how to worship Allah. What's the best way to get closer to my Lord so that I can be forgiven for my sins, be saved from the hellfire, and enter into the Jannah, enter into the paradise? That's the importance of following the Sunnah, not just knowing the hadith, just knowing the how do I use it so that it benefits me in this life and in the next. So he says, وَمَا لَمْ يُشْرَعْ يُعْتَبَرْ بِدْعًا مَرْدُودًا. Whatever has not been legislated is considered to be an innovation. That is rejected. That a person, that action is rejected, as the Messenger ﷺ says, مَنْ عَمِلَ عَمَلًا لَيْسَ عَلَيْهِ أَمْرُنَا فَهُوَ رَدٌّ. Whoever does an action that is not from the religion, then that action is rejected. It's rejected, not accepted. And a person, as he says, بَلْ يَأْثِمْ عَلَيْهِ. A person will gain a sin for it, لِأَنَّهُ مَعْصِيَةٌ وَلَيْسَ طَاعَةٌ, because it's disobedience. It's not considered obedience to make up something, to follow something new, or to bring something new that Allah didn't legislate, or the Messenger ﷺ didn't legislate. It's not from ta'ah. He says, ثم إن المنهج السليم في أداء العبادات المشروعة هو الاعتدال بين التساهل والتكاسل وبين التشدد والغلو. What is the correct and proper way? The correct and proper way is between the two extremes. It's between the two extremes. That a person is balanced and they're between. They're not overboard to the right. They don't go to extremes in worship. And at the same time, they're not too lenient. That a person is not overboard, not too far to the right, and not too far to the left. As Allah said to the Messenger ﷺ, فَاسْتَقِمْ كَمَا أُمِرْتَ وَمَنْ تَابَ مَعَكَ وَلَا تَطْغَوْا. Be upright as you were commanded, and those who are with you, and don't go overboard, don't go to extremes. As it says in the ayat, that ayat is in Surah Hud, ayat 112, that a person is to be upright. So he says, the correct way is al-istiqama. وَذَلِكَ بِالْإِسْتِقَامَةِ فِي فِعْلِهَا عَلَى الطَّرِيقِ الْمُعْتَدَلِ. That a person worships Allah and that they're balanced. How do we know what's being balanced and what's not being balanced? Because my definition of balance might not be your definition of balance. So my definition of extreme we might not have the same definition. Some people might consider you extreme for praying 5 times a day. Somebody might consider a sister extreme for covering properly because she won't wear revealing clothes ever. Another sister might come and say she's extreme, right? So how do we know what's extreme and what's not extreme?
Well, basically, if you follow the Quran and Sunnah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, I perfected your religion.
Exactly.
So it means,
based on revelation. That what's in the middle, what's moderate, is what we find in the Quran and the Sunnah. And anything that goes outside of that, then the person has gone too far to either side. Either they've gone overboard or they're too lax. Either they're too lenient or to one side, or they're too harsh and overboard to the other side. Tayyib. He says, that's why it says, where Allah says, كَمَا أُمِرْتَ فَاسْتَقِمْ كَمَا أُمِرْتَ. Be upright as you were commanded to be. Now, if Allah commands the Messenger ﷺ to be upright, then it has to be that is in the middle. That Allah doesn't command the Prophet ﷺ with extremism. And He doesn't command it with something that is too lenient. But Allah commands with what is just. What is just. Be upright as you were commanded. Then Allah said at the end of the ayah, وَلَا تَطْغَوْا. And don't go overboard. يعني مجازوة الحد. Don't go overboard. Don't go overboard بالتشدد, by being too harsh, too much. Don't go overboard too much. And then he brings the hadith as he says, who is extremism. And then he brings the hadith that when the Prophet ﷺ found out that 3 of his companions, what they were doing. So he said, حيث قال أحدهم, one of them said, أنا أصوم ولا أفطر. I'm a fast every day. I'm a fast every day. Every day I'm fasting. Another one said, وقال الآخر أنا أصلي ولا أرقد. I'm a pray all night. I'm not sleeping. Right? Sahaba, companions. وقال الثالث أنا لا تزوج النساء. I'm not marrying any women. I'm not getting married at all. I'm just going to dedicate myself, like who does that? The monks and stuff like that. You know, monk, Sufi. Yeah. So the Prophet ﷺ, when you heard him say this, قال أما أنا فأصوم وأفطر. As for me, the Prophet ﷺ said, I fast and I break my fast. Meaning, to fast without breaking the fast ever is overboard. You're outside of the boundaries of the sunnah of the Messenger ﷺ. He said, "What tazawwaj an-nisa," and I marry women. I get married. So to do that is outside of the legislation. What is considered to be in the middle, is considered to be moderate. And then he said, فَمَنْ رَغِبَ عَنْ سُنَّتِي فَلَيْسَ مِنِّي. So whoever desires other than my sunnah, whoever desires other than what I'm doing, then they're not from my people. They're not from my people from doing what? Going overboard. He told this to the Sahaba, he corrected them and brought them back to what was the middle course. So the middle course is determined by the Quran and the Sunnah of the Messenger ﷺ. And these hadith and these chapters give importance to not just knowing it, that you got to use it. We have to use it. If we know it and we understand that we're able to use it in our lives, the outlook on life is different. It removes that outside pressure of people, the outside pressure of what somebody's going to say about me, the outside pressure of how people want to look at me, because I know I'm following revelation. I'm not following the crowd. As Allah dispraises, Allah speaks about the crowds in a negative way in the Quran. Most of them don't know. Aktharuhum. You'll find that most of them are not thankful. Most of them. So that's not a hujjah, a proof that most people do something. Most people are doing it, so it must be okay. We know from the old days that, you know, I forgot to say that. Everybody jump off a bridge, you want to jump off a bridge? We know that that's not a restricted way to live life just by following the crowd. Tayyib. I think we'll stop there for the night. Any questions?
Like the number of that hadith?
The hadith, which one? The last one?
The last one you mentioned.
It says, Al-Hadith, muttafiqun alayh. The hadith is agreed upon, which means what? Bukhari and Muslim. In the hadith books of Sahih Bukhari and Sahih Muslim. The number is not there, but that's a benefit of some Bukhari and Muslim, alhamdulillah.
We'll look for it.
Alhamdulillah. And you can be comfortable that it is authentic. It's be comfortable that it's authentic. It's in Bukhari and Muslim, alhamdulillah. Tayyib. Any other questions? Next week we'll start with Tawheed al-Asma wa Sifat. The oneness of Allah regarding His names, His beautiful names and His attributes. Insha'Allah. Wa sallallahu wa sallam wa barak ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam.